if you're a bit younger than me, you'll have absolutely no idea. And what is that funny plastic thing that he's holding? Can you see it? Who'd like to say what it is? It's a cassette tape. We used to use these in the olden days for recording things. Before we had phones, I know, for some of you. What, there was a world before we had phones? Yes. Before we had phones, we used to use these for recording things. They didn't record video like your phone does. It's just recording audio. But this is what we used, a cassette tape. And you could record things on it and then listen back to them. You could also buy these with pre-recorded music on them. Mostly my experience was recording other things on them. What did you record on them? Well, all sorts of things you wanted. Actually, we had one connected to a computer. Did you ever do that? You had to put the cassette tape in and make it talk to... Oh, my goodness, what a lot of my life was wasted waiting for those things to load up. But actually, what I mostly used these for was recording the top 40. How many of you did that? Every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock. And you wanted to record your favourite songs because they were actually announcing the top 40 live every evening at 5 o'clock, every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock. You didn't know when your song was going to be on. So what did you do? You had pressed down the play and record button at once and the pause button. And as soon as it announced your song, you hit that pause button so you could record your song and then spend all week listening to it. You all did it. You really did. And I had this thing, it was, actually it was about, maybe it was a little bit bigger than that box, a radio with one speaker with a tape recorder in it for recording this on. And I used to sit in my bedroom every Sunday evening and record. And my dad's an accountant, which means he knows nothing about music technology. And he said to me, to get the best recording on tape, you need to turn the radio up as loud as you possibly can. Absolute nonsense. But that's what he told me, and I believed it. And so I did that for years. And I tell you, this radio thing I had, when you turned it up to maximum, it sounded absolutely awful. So I had a big beanbag, and so I would turn the radio upside down on top of the beanbag to try and absorb some of this terrible sound that was coming out of it, whilst getting my hands into the beanbag, trying to find the pause button at the right time. Cassette tapes, look what we've lost. All of that fun. When I was maybe 10, I think, I discovered a blank cassette tape like this at home, and I thought, I've not seen that one before, I wonder what it is, and so I put it in my tape machine and I listened to it. And what it was my parents must have tried to record me and one of my brothers when we were younger. Listening back to the tape, I think probably I was about 4, which would have made him about 1.5. And I think actually probably they were trying to record him. There was something he was doing that was cute or amusing or interesting, and or he was trying to say something really interesting, and they were trying to record that. But when I listened back to this tape as a 10-year-old, I could not hear Will very much. I could mostly just hear this really grating, annoying sound which went on and on and on, repeating itself the whole time, which was me. And I was saying, no, William, not like that. William, don't do it like, no, William, that's wrong. Mummy, William is doing it wrong. William, no, William, that's not how you do it. No, that's not it. Over and over and over again. I have no idea what it was he was trying to do. He was thinking the world was a very sad place. It was never supposed to be like this. Why can I not get a word in edgeways? Surely being a younger brother was supposed to be more fun than this appears to be. I was absolutely mortified listening back to that thing. Can you imagine as a 10-year-old listening to it and thinking, oh my goodness, what an idiot I was. I was so bossy. I had it in my head that being bossy was just about the worst thing you could be. And I was so bossy. I absolutely hated it. I was mortified. So what do you think I did? I took that tape. I had it in a special place ready for the next Sunday evening. And I recorded my favourite songs over it. Please don't tell my parents. Not only did I record over it, I made a point of thinking, I don't want to ever be known as bossy. I don't want to be somebody who squashes people. I don't want to be somebody who manipulates people or tells them what to do. I mean, I know that's what 4-year-olds do now. I've had lots of them. But listening back to it, I thought, oh, no, I never want to be like that. I'm determined. Nobody's ever going to call me bossy. How about you? How are you with power? Are you ever too bossy? Are you ever too controlling? Do you ever try and manipulate people? Do you normally always get your own way, and is that a problem? Do you give space to other people, or do you always need them to give you what you need? What's your relationship with power like? What's it like when somebody criticises you, or maybe nobody ever criticises you? And do you wonder why? Is it because you're perfect? Possibly. Is it because they're so frightened of how defensive and horrible you can be when you're criticised? What's your relationship with power like? Do you ever throw your weight around? Do you now regret those times when you have thrown your weight around a lot? Or do you ever turn on the tears because you've realised that's one way to get what you want? What's your relationship with power like? I mean, and you might think, well, I don't have very much power, but we all do, actually. You may not be leading a big corporation, but you might be part of a team doing something, part of a committee, or you may have friends who you can steer in different ways. Or maybe you use passive aggression to get what you want, or maybe you control your loved ones much more tightly than needs to happen. What are you doing with your power? The result of using power badly is not just a mortifying cassette tape. It's much more serious than that. Power can be used for good too. When we use our power badly, you can end up ruining someone's day. You can end up hurting someone. Actually, you can end up stealing their life, even taking their life. The Bible knows a lot about power and how we use power. At the very beginning of the Bible, there's this story of Cain and Abel. Do you remember? And they have this power struggle. And God comes to Cain and he says, you need to be really careful what you do next. I'm paraphrasing, that's not exactly what he says, but that's the kind of a thing. You need to be really careful what you do next. And what does Cain do? He murders his brother. That story of, if you've got power, if you can inflict violence on someone else, if you have power to hurt someone else, then you can get what you want. That's the story of the world, isn't it? It's the story that we see again then in the next book of the Bible, and Pharaoh has power over the children of Israel, doesn't he? And will make them do whatever he wants. He takes their firstborn sons in order to make them obey him. And then as we go through the Bible, you've got, many other examples, but David takes Uriah's life so that he can have Uriah's wife Bathsheba for himself. And then in the minor prophets we get the great powerful Assyrians and Babylonians coming and taking life and land for the people of Israel. Right the way through the Bible, it knows all about this relationship we have with power, this sense that might is right, the survival of the fittest. If you can threaten people with violence, if you have power to take their life even, then you can get what you want. You're going to rule the world. You're the one who's going to get to recreate the world in your own image, what you want it to be. You just need enough power to make it happen. We see it at work in the world at the moment, don't we? Obviously. It's the story of the world, really. Everyone knows that. Might is right. If you've got the biggest guns, then you get to make the decision at the end of the day. You get the last word. That's not new, is it? You know that. That really is the story of the world. It's what everyone thinks. Though maybe not absolutely everyone. Because it's not the way that Jesus thinks. It's not the way that he uses power. It's not the way he wants the world to be. So turn with me if you would. If you've got a Bible, it's going to be on the screen as well, but there's Bibles on the windowsills if you want to grab one if you've not brought one. Turn with me to John 18. Again, we're going to start at verse 28. This is Jesus before Pilate, and it's quite a long passage, but I'm going to point out as we go along every time we see power and how power is being used, okay? And what we're going to see is that Jesus just will not sign up to the might is right understanding of power. He will not sign up to taking power over other people in order to get them to be or to do what he wants them to be or do. So just notice, every time there's a mention of power. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death that he was going to die. That's the first mention of power, isn't it? And how does it come up? It comes up because the Jewish leaders say, we need this man out of the way, just like Cain wanted Abel out of the way. We need him out of the way in order for the world to be what we think it should be. But we don't have the power to take his life. And so they bring him to Pilate. Why to Pilate? Because Pilate is almost like the all-powerful one. Pilate is the hands and feet of Caesar in that place. And he has the power to take away life. So they bring Jesus to him. We've got this problem. We've got this problem in our community. We've got this problem in our society. We need someone to sort it out. Who can sort it out? We take it to the most powerful person, the one who has the power to take life or to grant life. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." That's the second mention of power, isn't it? Jesus is saying, I'm stood before you, vulnerable, weak. He's not denying at the moment that Pilate has power to do what he wants, to make the world the way he wants it to be. But Jesus is saying, no, I do have powerful friends, and they could come and defend me. And of course, he's talking about the disciples, but implicit is he could call armies of angels to come and defend him, couldn't he? But Jesus is refusing to do that. No, I have friends who would fight my corner, but that's not the way it works. That's not the way I'm going to do it. And also remember that that's what all of Jerusalem wanted him to do, isn't it? That's some of the story of Palm Sunday we're going to think about next week. All of Jerusalem wanted Jesus to come in with more power in order to throw out the Romans, in order to defeat Caesar, in order to claim their own land and their own people back again. Verse 37, is that where I got to? Yes. "You are a king then?" said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." That's really significant, isn't it? So we have this truth of might is right, violent power will win in the end. But Jesus is living a different kind of truth. He's speaking from a different kind of truth. That's not the way he's using power. And Pilate seems to pick up that this is a different kind of truth. This is a different story. This is new. And so he asks this famous question, "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him, but it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. That's the way the world works, isn't it? Pilate is reverting to type. You're not doing what I want, so I'm going to harm you. I'm going to use my power to threaten your life, to hurt you. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and the officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law. According to that law, he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God. And they're reverting to type, aren't they? No, the only way we can solve this is for him to be out of the way, and you need to do it for us. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. Where do you come from? He asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. Do you refuse to speak to me? Pilate said, and this is it, this is the biggest claim, this is the most clear way this claim is stated. Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you? That's his truth. That's the way he thinks the world is. I have power to take your life, or if you do what I want for me, if you do what I want you to do for me, then I will give you life, I will grant you life. Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. That's wonderful, isn't it? Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, if you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at the place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of presentation of the Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king? Pilate asked. We have no king but Caesar, the chief priests answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. Isn't that remarkable? Jesus stands before Pilate with a totally different truth, a different way from the way of the world, the way of love and forgiveness rather than the way of power enforced by violence. And what do the Jews at that point say? Or what do those Jewish leaders say? Not that way. Not him. We want the way of Caesar. We're still sold on might is right. We want to follow the way of power. Pilate's truth is the truth of power enforced by violence. Might is right. I can control and manipulate other people to get them to do what I need them to do for me. I can remake the world in my own image. Jesus' truth is what we heard Sarah read from Philippians 2, isn't it? Jesus emptied himself, did not use his power to his own advantage. That Jesus comes as the king, yes, but as the servant king, as the humble king. That's his truth. And all of the kingdoms of the world have been built by violent power. But Jesus is bringing in this new kingdom. And he's building his kingdom on the love that forgives. That's his truth. He's not going to claim victory by power, but he's going to bring his kingdom of love and mercy and forgiveness, his kingdom of healing, his kingdom of new life. I told you that right at the beginning of the Bible is this story of this power struggle, this story of power enforced by violence. But of course that's not the beginning of the Bible, is it? Actually the Bible starts a few chapters earlier. Genesis 1 tells us the story of the God who is love and the God who creates because of his love, and he is the Lord of all. And Jesus witnesses to that. He witnesses to the love of God, to God who is love. And Jesus dies for that witness. He comes and he loves the world, but the world rejects him. He comes and he loves his disciples, but his disciples walk away from him. He comes and he loves his enemies, but his enemies crucify him. And then what does he do? Well, just before he dies, he says, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. They've been sold this lie of how power works, of how the world works. Forgive them. And as Jesus is lifted upon the cross, still refusing violence, still refusing to seek revenge, still refusing to hate his enemies, he draws all people to himself. He draws all people into his healing truth. He draws us out of the toxic story of violent power, and he draws us into his irresistible kingdom of forgiveness and love. Amen. If you were there on Good Friday, if you saw that scene, you would think, another idealist bites the dust. You know? Because at the end of Good Friday, it looks like Caesar's story wins. It looks like the world's story wins, doesn't it? That violent power, it does get the last word, does get what it wants in the end. But of course, it's not the end of the story. And Jesus is resurrected, and in Jesus' resurrection, God is saying, that's the one that tells the truth. Jesus is vindicated in the resurrection. It's as if God the Father is saying to us, no, don't follow the way of Pilate, don't follow the way of Caesar, don't follow the way of violent power. Follow Jesus. He's the one who tells you the truth. He's the one who leads you into truth. Look to the cross. Believe in God and be drawn into the life-giving, beautiful way of Jesus. And as we're drawn into that way, then the world is being made new. And that's the hope of the gospel, isn't it? That we can turn from our addiction to power enforced by violence, and instead we turn to Jesus and his way of love and forgiveness. In Ephesians chapter 3, Paul talks about how the manifold wisdom of God is being made known to all the rulers and authorities, all the principalities and powers in the universe. It's like through the church living in this love and forgiveness that we see in Jesus, the church is making known to all the powers of the world, no, this is the truth, this is the way it is, this is who to follow, this is the way to be. Which I think is great. And maybe you do too. Or you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, this is sort of interesting, but what on earth's it got to do with me? I'm not Pilate. I can't decide to execute someone. I don't have power like that. Or maybe I don't even have any power. But of course, it is all about all of us. It's about perhaps how you treat your spouse. It's about maybe how you talk to your children or how you deal with your wider family. It's about how you interact with your colleagues at work. It might be about how you harbour bitterness and hatred in your heart sometimes. It might be how you refuse to forgive or refuse to offer mercy to others, but instead seek revenge. It's about how you sometimes don't allow the people around you the space that they need to grow and change. It's about how you throw all the toys out of the pram if you think somebody is disrespecting you. It's about how you might assume that other people around you owe you happiness, or that they need to do something to make your life meaningful or to give you fulfillment. It's about how you fail to notice your own prejudices and the way that they affect the people around you, or maybe it's the way that you fail to see your own privilege. It's about how you might become jealous at the success of others and push them away because they've ended up more happy than you. The way we use our power is all of those things. And the way that we see Jesus before Pilate shows us a different way, invites us into a different way of using our power and our influence, of how we treat other people around us. So maybe this week, as you go out from here and into your week, maybe you just might notice every time you're using power, how you're using it. Every time you're shaping a situation or influencing people, how's that going? Is it good? Is it bad? Are you happy with it? And when I say make a note of it, you might make a mental note. You might even write it down. You might write down, you might reflect on this week as you're going through it. How have I used my influence? How have I used my power? Is it the way of Jesus? And if it's not, then bring it to him and ask for him to forgive you and ask for him to change you. We are all invited to surrender to Jesus this morning. Maybe you've never done that before, but you can. You might have seen this picture of Jesus I've been trying to present, and you think, my goodness, I didn't know it was like that. I want to give my life to that, and you can do that. We're all invited to surrender to Jesus, to the way of Jesus. We're all invited to receive his love and to learn his love and to learn his forgiveness. And can you imagine what the world would be like if we actually did that, if we actually believed this, if we actually lived it? Can you imagine how different Crediton would become if all of us in here just refused to use our power against other people? Can you imagine how compelling the witness would be of this church if we were consistently, and we do lots, but even more consistently offering forgiveness and love to all the people around us? Can you imagine how different the world would be if we really allowed Jesus to tell us who we are and what the world should really be like? You see, the gospel, the good news of Jesus is not primarily a story about how God is more powerful than anyone else. That's not really the point of it at all. The gospel is telling us that God is forgiving love. And the gospel invites us to live in that forgiving love. When we see in John 18, John 19, Jesus stood before Pilate. Jesus stood before Pilate. In fact, we're actually also seeing love stood before power. Love stood before power. And God has vindicated the way of love. Because might isn't right. In fact, love is the better way, which is remaking all things. God has vindicated the way of love, and he invites us into it. Because might isn't right, and love is the better way that is remaking all things. We're going to share in bread and wine. We're going to celebrate communion. And I mean, that means all sorts of things to us, doesn't it? But maybe it might particularly mean today we're invited into the way of love by Jesus, who gave himself for us. He gave his life so that we could live, truly live. We're invited to surrender our power to him and ask that he makes us new as we take bread and wine. He can remake us in the image of his Son, not needing to control, not needing to manipulate, not needing to recreate the world in a particular way, but embodying the love and forgiveness that we find in Jesus, that we remember now, that we celebrate, that we, perhaps as we take bread and wine into our bodies, we very intentionally take the way of Jesus and make it central in our lives and in our hearts again. The children and the young people are going to come back, but we're going to take this opportunity of waiting for them as a time to just be still. And if you want to close your eyes, if you want to open your hands, you could do. And just invite God, if all the things that have gone on this morning, if there's something that you really needed to know or experience or hear to set you free today, to make you new, ask him to stick that thing deep in your heart. So we pray, come Holy Spirit. Come and rest upon us. Come and lead us into truth. Maybe as I've been speaking this morning, you've had memories come back, like I had that memory of me bullying my brother. You might have memories come back of times when you've got your own way, but now it doesn't feel like it was a good thing. Or other regrets. If so, bring them to the Lord. Just admit them to him and ask for a fresh start. We pray, come Holy Spirit, and make us new. And you may feel like, how could I live in that forgiving love? I don't have that in me. And if that's the case, the answer is to ask God to fill you with that forgiving love now. You might be filled with his love for you in a fresh way. You might be filled to such a degree that it would overflow out of you to the people around you. So that instead of needing to establish your kingdom and your will in the world, more and more you would find God's life, God's freedom spilling out of you to the people around you. We pray, come Holy Spirit, and fill us with your love.